Here on Drive Time, it's Jim Davis in for Eddie Nestor on this Thursday evening on BBC Radio London. So tonight we're talking about those caught in the leasehold scandal, as it's being described, by a huge number of people who own their flats up and down the country. But of course, where safety certification is required, there's a massive waiting list now for buildings to be checked. There's also sudden, eye-wateringly high and unexpected communal bills that are being issued in relation to both that and other matters. And a huge number of people are feeling that this is absolutely the thin end of the wedge. And let's talk now to Katie, who's called in from Chester and actually runs an organisation, I believe, Katie, involved in this particular issue. What's it called?
Hi, Jim. Hello. Yes, I run the National Leasehold Campaign.
Okay.
It's predominantly a Facebook group that has over 18,000 members. So it is huge and it's growing daily as people have their penny drop moment that they are actually caught up in the leasehold scandal in numerous different ways.
Okay, and the scandal that you described there with that term, is that exclusively relating to this external wall certification certificate?
No, it's not. It's the umbrella for all of the abuses that come under leasehold, which is there are very many. Me personally, I was caught up in the leasehold house scandal. So houses being sold off in the northwest as leasehold for no other reason than to create a second asset on a property.
Which I understand has now been made illegal, has it?
No, actually, no, it hasn't, Jim.
It hasn't yet?
No. We're still waiting. 2017, the government announced that they were going to ban leasehold houses. There has been no legislation passed.
Amazing.
We are still waiting for ground rents of future leasehold flats to be set at zero. That still has not been passed. So actually, we're no further forward than when they said they were going to ban and stop ground rents.
Right. Now, with regards to the EWS1 certificate, now this relates to buildings that initially 18 metres and over or 6 stories or higher that had any kind of external wall or cladding, as it's more commonly known, suddenly needed to get one of these certificates to prove that that building is obviously safe and that the materials being used were all safe and non-combustible, etc. If they're not, of course, then remedial work needs to be carried out, and of course the problem rumbles on. But safety is at the key and the core of all of this, isn't it? Yet thousands and thousands of people all over the country are now waiting for these inspections to take place. Have you got any sense of how big a problem that is?
It is absolutely I cannot describe how the housing market is literally going to grind to a halt here because, you know, people don't realise, those in flats, that it affects almost categorically every single flat, and they won't realise it until they come to want to sell their properties, and they're people who have bought their properties, they won't be able to get a mortgage on them because their mortgage lenders all require this EWS1 certificate, which is so difficult to get hold of. With like your previous caller said, there's only around 300 people that do these reports, and it's not just a simple case of they sign it off. There's an extensive survey and costs associated with that. The EWS process, it costs a block of flats at least £40,000 to get that certification.
And as I understand it, they actually have to do work to the walls. They have to remove walls.
It's an extensive thing to get. So
it's not just a visual survey, is it? They actually have to do structural investigations and ascertain what the materials they're dealing with are.
Absolutely. And the cost to bear of all of that falls upon the leaseholders, because the way the leasehold system is, it's really not fit for purpose, and it's feudal and basically needs to be scrapped in this country like everywhere else in the world. But categorically, all of these costs, everything keeps falling down on the leaseholders. The waking watch cost, the cost for remediation.
So the waking watch cost is those that might be living in an immediately problematic building, and they have to have somebody there constantly on duty, don't they?
Yes, absolutely. And some of those costs, people are paying between £400 and £800 a month on top of their mortgages for their waking watch costs.
And of course,
absolutely outrageous.
It's only the freeholder or the owner of the building itself that can instigate this process. And whilst many are saying they're trying to do that, of course, they too are coming up against this logjam of availability of surveyors and all these problems.
And again, the leaseholder are the people without the control here, because like you've just said, the building owners, these leaseholders don't own the buildings. They don't own their flats. What they own is a lease which allows them to occupy that flat. The actual actual building is owned by a freeholder. Now, quite often, those freeholders can live offshore and we don't actually know who they are. This is why the leasehold system is not fit for purpose within this country, and that is the root cause of all of our problems, is the leasehold system. The leaseholders bear the cost.
I've been made aware because there's a lot of Twitter activity around this and social media, which is good because it's mobilising, isn't it? But at the same time, it does raise further concerns that, for example, scammers have been hijacking this EWS1 process as well, offering fake cladding inspections to vulnerable people and taking thousands of pounds from leaseholders in the process. So that's something to be very, very aware of.
And it's also creating a massive panic amongst leaseholders because, and it's not just the financial burden that this puts on them. I cannot stress how important that people's mental health is really suffering here. People want to end their own lives. They don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. It is very, very serious, both financially and on people's mental health.
Well, we can't ignore the fact that, aside from the financial black hole that this creates, there's obviously the obvious concerns that you might be living in a building with combustible cladding on it on the 18th floor or something, and that's given the backdrop of the Grenfell tragedy, and the reason why all this is happening is literally keeping people awake at night, Katie, isn't it? Terrified,
absolutely terrified for their own safety.
So a moment or two ago, I was talking to Sebastian there, who runs a charity. I don't know if you know Sebastian, but
yes, I do know.
Okay, well, interestingly, he was saying he thinks the government has to take control of this, has to assume this, and you agree, do you?
They absolutely categorically have to. I get very frustrated when I see the government going on about build. Yes, they're looking for the future, but oh my God, what a disaster they've left behind. They need to turn around and fix the current existing problems that exist. Do not leave us stranded, because that's what leaseholders are feeling like. They are totally stranded by this government.
What role do local authorities play here? Because obviously it's their planning departments that will have skin in the game here. So what kind of pressure can they bring to bear on the freeholders and the surveyors to get this logjam moving?
Very little, to be honest. And central government are going to be taking away powers from local councils on the permitted development rights, because they're just about to allow developers to put on 2 stories on top of leasehold buildings with no need for planning permission. So there's no regard for leaseholders here at all. The answer, government need to take action and promptly.
And if it is that you are suddenly hit by one of these eye-watering bills, be they related to safety certification or others, and as we've heard example of tonight, that might be a legacy energy bill or something like that. Do leaseholders, the owners of these flats, have any kind of comeback?
Well, the legal advice is you have to pay up, and then you can challenge the service charge at tribunal to see whether it's reasonable. But leaseholders, again, don't have a leg to stand on regarding they have to pay up and then they dispute, because if you default the terms of your lease, which is paying your service charges, then you can face forfeiture of your property and you lose absolutely everything. The freeholder gets the flat back and you have nothing, but you still have the existing mortgage to pay. It's a lose-lose situation. Yes, you can go to first-tier tribunal, and many people do. Leaseholders annually get these increase in service charges. They dispute them at first-tier tribunal. They win. Then the next year, the next service charge is also questionable, and then they go back to tribunal, and it's a revolving door. It is literally, and it takes so much time and energy.
And it's obviously very stressful. And of course, there are some phenomenal mortgage deals out there with terribly low interest rates right now, which are totally unavailable to people because you can't sell, you can't even remortgage, you can't move any of this finance through.
And these schemes like the shared ownership, the help to buy, shared ownership implies that you're sharing the ownership, but you don't share the cost. You could have a 25% shared ownership property, but you don't pay 25% of those costs. You're burdened with 100% of those costs. So there's nothing shared about it.
Katie, this is a story that's going nowhere, and as you said yourself, it's only going to grow in momentum, and we'll continue to discuss it tonight, and I've absolutely no doubt we'll come back to it in the future as well. But please do let us know your thoughts. Thank you for calling in tonight. That was very interesting. If you are a flat owner, a leasehold flat, of course, or you have perhaps part of a shared ownership flat, are you worried about this? Have you had that penny drop moment that Katie talked about recently? Do let us know.